What's up fam, it's Creative Sav here and welcome back to another tutorial. In this video, we are going to be learning how to create this. So we are going to be creating that beautiful animation you just watched together. As usual, if you look into the description, you would see a Gumroad link to the starter file. The starter file is basically the blend file containing the model so we could work on this together. And also, as usual, we would have the finished file, the completed project, linked in the description for just $1. I made an announcement in my last video. I started a Discord community. The link is in the description. You're free to join. There are a bunch of animators in the community like you and I. We're all trying to learn. We're all trying to grow together. You could post some of the cool projects you have worked on in the past. You could show us some of the projects you are currently working on. If there is any advice you need, if there are problems you're trying to solve, the community is there to help everyone out. So I would love to see you being a part of it. Link is in the description. Now let's get right into the tutorial. If you open your starter file, first thing you're going to see is the phone model. We are going to be using an iPhone 12 Pro model here. In the video, I actually used the Google Pixel 6 Pro model, but I got that model from CG Trader for $12. So it wouldn't be fair to the creator, to the artist that designed it, for me to give it to you guys for free. So I'll put a link in the description for that too if you want to get that exact model. But this one is free. And I'll also put this in the description if you want to see the guy that made it. You guys know that I'm not a big fan of modeling. Even in my business, I don't do any modeling. I have people in my team that I work with that do that. I like focusing on the creative direction and animation. Now let's jump right into it. So, what is our first shot? Our first shot is a simple sliding up shot. Every single shot, most shots in this project are actually very simple when you get the drift. It's basically a similar flow, but when you get it once, you'll be able to recreate it in your own project. So this is the first shot, right? The phone is sliding up, and I use this a lot in many of my projects, just having the product slide up. So to do that in shot 1 collection, let's just duplicate this guy we have here. Shift D, duplicate him on the x-axis. Cool. Now we'll have these two guys. I usually turn on this move tool so I can easily grab stuff. Yeah. Now let's add a new camera. Add a camera. Let's set it to 100mm. Yep. Then Control Alt 0. Control Alt 0 will put you in the camera view and to adopt the current view of your viewport. So yeah. Let's go back a bit. GY. Cool. I like to set my passport to viewport display to 1. Yeah, this is actually a very simple animation, and most of the shots we're going to work on here they're going to be 48 frames long. So that's 2 seconds long for a 24 frame per second animation. So set that to 48 frames. Yeah. Yep. So now at frame 1, let's go into camera view, or at frame 48. Yeah, I like starting backwards when I'm imputing keyframes. It just makes things easier to start from the finished point of the animation. Hit N on your keyboard to bring out this entire panel. At this frame, you want to put a Z location keyframe. Just the Z location, not everything. If you hit I over this, you are going to insert a keyframe in X, Y, and Z location, but we want it in just Z. And the same thing here. Yep. Then go to frame 1. So at the first frame, bring this guy down, insert single keyframe. Also bring this guy down, insert single keyframe. Now they are both at this position. Let's adjust this a bit. Replace single keyframe. If you hit replace keyframes, it replaces everything. You just want to work with this one. Let's see how it looks now. Yeah, very boring. Absolutely boring. Now we need to mess with the graph editor. The interpolation of the curve. We have talked about this a bit in previous tutorials. I'm sure you guys use this in your projects now. So go to graph editor. We would go from graph editor to the timeline, back to back to back. I think we can do shift F12 to go to timeline and shift F6 to go to graph editor. Yeah, that's the shortcut. Let's go to the graph editor. hit this drop down here to see all the properties that have an animation on them, that have keyframes. Now, since we set keyframes to only the Z location, we have just Z location here. So make sure you have selected it. Bring your mouse over the graph, hit A to select all, then hit home on your keyboard. What that does, I do that every single time. What that does is to make that particular graph you are working on to fill up the space. That's what you want, to be able to see that graph clearly. So what we do from here is to mess with the interpolation. So instead of it going from slow then to fast then slow, we want it to pop from fast to slow, like fast to slow, very quickly. So to do that, click on this handle and drag it up like this. Remember this curve. Remember the way this curve looks. We're going to do this a lot in this entire tutorial. So when we hit play now, you will see the way it's interpolated. See the way it pops up. Boom, boom. So let's do the same thing for this guy. A, home, fill up the space, drag it. Remember, I'm clicking on this handle before I drag it, because if you don't click on it while everything is selected, you are going to mess with all the curves. That's not what you want. You just want to mess with this particular handle. Cool. Now how does it look? Fresh. Looks nice, right? Now the next thing you should do is mess with the rotation. The best way to do this, and this is what I recommend, is for you to start from the end. The end is basically the final shot, how you want it to look like in the end. So this is how our shot looks like, but let's try something different. We're going to try some things different for this tutorial. Hit R twice so you could rotate like a ball. Hitting R twice does that. So find a rotation that looks nice to you. Let me try something like this. And for this guy, RR, like this. Cool. Let me bring this guy closer and move him a little bit backward. Yeah, so they are not intersecting. Cool. So you see, this looks like a way better shot. Very quickly, let's add the background. Mesh, plane, S, I don't know, 10, RX 90. Drag it backwards. Yeah, we'll have our shot. Let's also turn on the composition guides on our camera so we could frame things properly. Thirds. Kindly ignore the sound of nail being hammered in the next compound. Someone chose this exact moment while I'm recording a tutorial to hammer nails. Wonderful. So make sure it's in the center. Cool. Let's see how it looks. So you see, it looks a lot better already. At frame 48, hit I over rotation to add rotation keyframes, and also for the second one. So we have added keyframes for X, Y, and Z rotation. So at frame 1, we want to mess with the rotation of this phone. Now, you could go as specific as you want. You could decide that you want the phone to rotate in a very specific way. That's up to you. That's up to your own creative direction. So I want to do something like this. Just something very random. Yeah? Something like this. Hit I to insert new keyframe. You want this one to be something like this. Yeah, the specific rotation absolutely depends on you, however you want it to be. So let's look at it right now. Okay, it looks kind of weird because of the interpolation. You know, we did very random rotation. Remember, if you have a very specific way you want it to look, you want it to rotate in a very specific way, do that. I'm not about teaching tutorials where people just copy exactly that same thing and they can't go forward to create amazing work for themselves. So I would implore you to actually try things out, make something cool. So what we're going to do right now is exact same thing we did for the Z location, now for all the rotation axes. Hit A, home, to see all the axes, disable everything. Then one by one, we will do the same thing for each axis. So start with the X rotation. The same thing we did. Mess with the curve, make it go from fast to slow. Same thing here, since this one is going up, curves like this. Z rotation, same thing with this guy, curves like this. Nice. So you notice, look, the interpolation has changed. It doesn't look weird like this now. It's coming out in a very cool, slick way. So let's do the exact same thing for this guy. Disable everything. Start from this. Home. Mess with the graph to look like this. Y rotation. Mess with the graph to look like this. And Z rotation. Do the exact same thing. Like, we'll do this a lot in this tutorial because that's what differentiates basic animation to animation that looks slick, that looks like it pops, because things just go pow, pow, pow. You could do this exact same interpolation, this exact same animation motion throughout your entire video, and to just click, to just come together so well. These two shots, they were basically going the same direction. You would see it in the tutorial. Let's just keep going. Now that we have done that, let's see how it looks. Nice. Nice. Cool. Now let's set up a very quick lighting. You could add an HDRI. Find an HDRI from HDRI Haven. Environment texture, open. Now see how it looks. Nice. Cool. Now let's add our own light, our own area lighting. But let's just add a very simple 3-point light very quickly. We have gone over this in a couple tutorials before, so I won't spend much time doing this. Just duplicate, rotate. Let's add a point light behind. Increase the radius. Move it behind. Cool. Now let's see how this looks. I think we need to increase the power of this. Let me turn off the HDRI so I can see exactly what I'm doing. Yeah, so we need to increase the power of this. Let's say 100. Yeah, 100 is nice. Let's say 200 for this. And the points, let's just 80. Fresh. Or 120. Now make our background white or blue, whichever one you prefer. Like, there are no rules to this thing. Blue or white, blue or white. Let's make it white. Did my blender just freeze for 1 sec? Yeah, cool. So you can see now. If you don't like anything about the rotation, you could just change it. For example, this phone right here is rotating a little bit too much on a certain axis. I think is the Z axis. Yeah, it's rotating just a little bit too much, so you could mess with it. Instead of going this far, you could do GY and bring it up a bit so it's not rotating so much. And make sure you also adjust the entire curve. Cool. It looks better now. It doesn't rotate that much. Fresh. You could do this with any product and to look nice, just to introduce the product. Let's see it in the rendered view. Okay, I think it's time to turn up our HDRI. Cool. Okay, this phone is hella reflective. What? Let's focus on the animation. Now we're done with the first shot. Completely done. Now this is the second shot. To do that, let's duplicate the first shot. Do a duplicate collection. Now turn this one off and rename this to shot 2 very quickly. Cool. Now make sure, I've said this before, I'm saying it again, make sure you change the camera that is active, the active camera. Make sure you change the active camera when you're moving to a new collection, because you duplicated the camera and we are looking through the other camera. So click on this to make this new one active. Just select all the keyframes and hit delete. Yeah, so you can start afresh. Alt R. Cool. Now this is a quite different shot. The camera is looking top down. Let's set that up real quick. Take our plane RX90. Let's move it here a bit. Take our phones and rotate it rx minus 90, and this one rx minus 90. From the video, one was flipped over, so we'll flip this one over, ry 180. Yeah, so let's just frame it right. Okay, make sure it's not sticking out. Make sure it's not sticking out of your plane. To do that, just go from underneath GZ and raise it up until you don't see it anymore. Nice. So this is it. Now the first thing I would like us to do is to parent this phone to the plane. So hit the one phone, hit the other phone, hit the plane, Control P, parent. Yeah. Now when we move the plane, everything should move. Okay, this is a very similar animation. It's just basically messing with the graph again, interpolation. At frame 1, let's rotate on the y-axis. At frame 1, let's do minus 40. Insert single keyframe. At frame 48, let's do the other way, 40. Insert single keyframe. Now, this is a very boring animation. This is what most beginner animation looks like. But we are not just beginners. We have style. We are slick. So we're going to mess with the curve. What we want is for it to go from fast to very slow, then fast again. It looks very cool. You see it all the time in action movies. Make sure you're working with the Y rotation. Click on this keyframe, Shift D to duplicate, and bring it somewhere here. Let's say at frame 10. You want these first 10 frames to be very fast, then slow down at frame 10. Then from frame 40, it speeds up again. So at frame 10, now make sure it's almost flat. This is what I mean. GY to bring it up. Make sure your plane is almost flat. Yeah. Then go to frame 40, duplicate this keyframe and raise it up just a little bit. Make sure that's frame 40. Yeah, so this is why I did it. From frame 10 to frame 40, the movement is very little, but frame 1 to 10 is very sharp. Frame 40 to 48 is very sharp. So we need to mess with the actual curve. It doesn't look right yet. See, there's a weird pause. Yeah, so what we should do is to click on this keyframe, hit V, change the handle type to free. Do the same here, change the handle type to free. We are doing this so that we can move the handles independently. If I move this handle, it shouldn't affect this other one, right? The way this one is right now, if I move one handle, it's affecting the other handle. But now with this one that we have set to free, they don't affect each other. So what we need to do now is, first of all, make these two guys to be as straight as possible. The point is simple. You want it to be very cool, smooth, slow motion. So at the beginning, we want it to start fast and end slow. So we do this, what we did in the first shot. Now at the end, we want it to start slow and end fast. So we do the opposite of that. Simple. Now remember this graph. Remember the way this graph looks. You would need it whenever you want to figure out how to get this animation. Remember how this graph looks. From fast to slow, from slow to fast. Now let's play it. Cool. And this is the cool thing about this specific kind of animation. It basically becomes a loop. You could play the entire thing again and again and again, and it looks like it has no end. It looks like it's flipping over when it's not actually flipping over. So let's change the position of our camera. Set our camera to the top view like this, Ctrl-Alt-0. And now rotate our camera a bit, just R like this. Yeah, you can see it. We got our shot, man. Let's make this background blue. Now it depends on you. Again, it depends on you. However you want it to be, it's your choice. It's your video. Add a new material. Let's make this one of the same color. Oh my god, it does not look good. How does it look rendered? It doesn't look that bad. Nah, blue does not look good. Let's change it back to white. Let's change it back to white. Yeah, white looks a lot better. And yeah, this is why the plane is this large. You don't want it to cut off. See, at frame 48, there's a hole here. and for that reason we like to scale up this plane. If we scale the plane now, since the phone is parented to it, it also scale. So let's do that in edit mode. Yeah, cool. Fresh. Now we don't have any cuts out in the end. And if you notice, there's one last thing I did in the video to really accentuate the entire drop, to show that the phone actually dropped. It's just a tiny little animation. Let's do that right now. From frame 1, let's set a Y rotation keyframe. But before we do that, we don't want it to rotate like this. Let's go to frame 24. We want it to rotate from this axis, from the edge. If we rotate RY, since the origin is in the middle, we are rotating from that point. So we need to change that. Just hit shift right click. Shift right click will set your cursor on that specific point. Then go to object, set origin to 3D cursor. Yeah, let's do the same thing here. Shift right click, do the same thing for this phone, origin to 3D cursor. Now when we rotate on the y-axis, yeah, it's not rotating from the center anymore. It has this flappy vibe. So cool. From frame 10, let's set a Y keyframe for both of them. Then back at frame 1, let's raise this one a bit. Let's say just this much. Yeah, insert keyframe. Do the same to this guy, just a bit. Yeah. Now you see they drop down while it's rotating. But we also want this drop down to have the interpolation. We want it to have that nice curve. You could choose to do it, you could choose to not do it, depends on you. But I like messing with my curves. So go to your graph editor. What's the shortcut again? F6. Yeah. And do the same thing that we did here. See, this is actually really simple. Just move this here and do the same thing for this guy. Why is that dog barking? Why did the dog choose this very moment to bark? Anyway, yeah, we have our animation. Nice, sweet, clean. Looks like an endless loop. I love it. Fresh. So that's the first 2 shots. So let's jump right into the third one. So for the third shot, yeah, this is a very cool rotating shot that I've seen like a lot of times in a lot of phone animations, like proper professional phone animation. So let's do it. Let's duplicate this guy again. Rename it to shot 3. As we did before, hit A on your timeline, hit A, X, and delete all keyframes. RX90 to put our background back where it's meant to be. Oh, they're still parented together. Okay, Alt P, clear parent. Cool. RX90. Yeah, let's just reset it to the way it was before. Now for this shot, we would want to be rotating our product at this point, from this specific point, the edge. So let's first line things up. Change your active camera. Make sure you're looking through the front. Ctrl-Alt-0. Yeah. Now let's rotate this one this way, and rotate the other one this way. So we want to form something like this line in between them. Yeah, they should be pointing at each other actually. Yeah, something like this. Now change your origin. Shift right click, as we did before, object, set origin to 3D cursor. So our phone is now rotating on this axis. Cool. And not on the edge like before. Let's do it for this other phone. Object, set origin, 3D cursor. Nice. Now when I was working on this project, I ran into a problem. I ran into an annoying problem. Let's move the camera. Frame it the way we want. Something like this, yeah. In the center. Nice. So this is what we have. Now, if you notice, we want it to rotate along this axis. To rotate, how would I describe this? Around, look at the way the video is. It's rotating around that point, right? So we want to do the same here. Well, you see, if we rotate on the x-axis, that's not what we want. Rotate on the y-axis, that's not what we want. Rotate on the z-axis, that is not what we want. Now, what I discovered is you have to change the rotation order. If we change the rotation order from XYZ to YXZ Euler, I don't even know why this works, but if you change the rotation order, now when you rotate on the x-axis, it's rotating properly. You can see now, rotating on the x-axis is rotating exactly the way we want it. Look at this other phone. When we rotate on the x-axis, look at what it's giving us. This is not what we're looking for. But look at this. This one is on the YXZ Euler rotation order. It's giving us what we want. I need to do some research to really understand why that works. I just tried it out that day and it worked. So let's do that for the second phone. Change it to YXZ rotation order. Now it works. At frame 1, RX, and make it rotate something like this. Set a keyframe. At frame 48, the other way, set a keyframe. Now you want this phone to do the exact opposite. At frame 1, you want him to be facing downwards ish. Set a keyframe. At the last frame, you want it to go the other direction. Yeah. So you can see it works, right? Sweet, we have our shot. Very nice. Let's make the background blue on this one, but light blue. Yeah, way lighter blue. Cool. Let's bring the background forward so it catches the light a little bit more. Now let's mess with the animation. Go to your graph editor. Now on the graph editor, let's do exactly the same thing we just did for the previous shot. At this keyframe, Shift D to duplicate it to frame 10. Do the same thing to frame 40. Make sure the rotation from 10 to 40 is very slight. V free. Make sure this one is very linear, very smooth. Make sure it's starting fast and going slow. Make sure it's ending from slow to fast. Cool. Remember this curve? Nice. We have done the exact same thing for this phone. Now let's do it for this other one. Very quickly. A home. You could do this when you get used to doing this. You do this very quickly. V, make this guy straight. Oops, make this guy straight. Mess with the curve. The graph editor is your final boss between you and a slick animation. Now you can see animation looks a lot better. Move this guy here. Move this guy here a bit. Move this guy here a bit. Yeah. See, animation looks a lot better. Nice. You can't compare this to the way it was before. It was boring. Now it looks very nice. Maybe our background color should be something like this. Yeah, it works. Weirdly, it actually works. Let's make the lights a little brighter. Let's bring it down. For this one, you should probably reduce the radius. Make it like 240. Yeah. Nice. Sweet shot. Now for the next shot. We are done with this. We are absolutely done with this. We already have what it looks like. If you notice, each shot is going in the same pattern, the same form of animation. So if we play this back to back, it will look so seamless. When you are ending a shot in a fast motion, this is actually a tip, a kind of transition. Ending a shot in a fast motion and beginning the next shot in a fast motion, it gives a very sleek, smooth, seamless transition. I do this all the time in my client work, cutting from shot to shot in that sleek animation. Now you guys can do it in your own videos. Let's move all those lights into shot 3. Yeah, when you're adding new objects, make sure your collection is selected, else you just throw the object outside. Now let's duplicate shot 3. If I just delete these 2 phones, we have messed with it a lot. Let's add this guy. Copy, click on a new collection, paste. So this is shot 4. Now this shot is very simple and it's very similar. Let's rotate our phone RZ180. Yeah, and let's set our camera to look at our phone like this. Control Alt 0. See, that's a mistake. Don't do that, please. Make sure our camera is active. Control Alt 0. Nice. Let's move it closer a bit. Nice. But fill it up. Yeah. So what we're trying to achieve here is very, very similar to the shots we have been working on. At frame 1, just like we did with the plane, rotate it this way. Let's say this much. Insert a keyframe. At the end, do the exact same thing the other way. So we are basically doing the same shots. This is how you come up with multiple shots for creative videos. These shots are basically the same, but they are from different angles, looking at different parts of the phone, showing different features. One is showing how sleek the phone is, showing the edges. One is showing the screen, the front and the back. The other one is showing the logo, the actual brand. So you see, they are very similar shots, but they're executed in very clever ways. Cool. So let's see how it looks now. As usual, very boring. Let's do the exact same thing we did right here. I think I'm just going to speed this up because I've done it so many times at this point. Shift D. Let's go. I think the last thing I did here was to rotate the camera. Yeah, to rotate the camera like this, so you have the shot. Done. Let's move the camera closer. Sweet. This is the entire shot. Imagine starting your video like this. Your viewers will be like, what? Are you kidding me? That is so cool. You're not starting with some boring stuff. Like there's action from the beginning. Oh, I think I missed something in the last shot. Yeah, the camera was rotating. Yeah, I missed something. In shot 3, the camera was rotating. And when you're choosing a direction, choose a specific direction to go throughout the entire, not throughout the entire video, throughout a series of shots. If you have 2 shots that you want to flow very seamlessly, make sure they are both going clockwise or counterclockwise. It's going to make the transition very, very smooth. So let's do the same thing here. Mess with the y-axis, single frame. The other one like this. And just pull out the same trick. This is like a secret, a trick I'm showing you guys that you could do with any project. Pull out the same trick. So you see the camera is now rotating with everything, adding to the entire movement. Now the phones are rotating, the camera is also rotating with that same interpolation. So it just has to look cool. It's it actually has to look nice. It has to look slick. You could come up with the most boring, the most basic shots, but adding this animation to it is going to make it very, very cool. Cool, that is it for the first 4 shots. Now the next shot. As you can see here, there's nothing complex about this shot. Let's duplicate the 4th one and call it shot 5. Actually very simple. Let's do what we did again to reset the entire collection. A, delete all keyframes. Alt R. Also, this camera should not be rotated. It's camera should look like this. Control Alt 0. Yeah, let's move it closer, something like this. Let's do this. I filled up the space in this one, but I want to keep it like this. Just do whatever you guys want to do, whatever idea you come up with, just flow with it. Now, this is my favorite way of doing a turntable shot. So to do that is pretty easy. Add an empty plane axis, scale it up, make sure the empty is directly in front on the camera, front camera. You could do this for the back camera too. Yeah, make sure it's directly in front. The center is in front. Yeah. Now, what you want to do is to parent the camera to the empty. So click on the camera, then click on the empty, shift click, Ctrl P, parent. Cool. Now when you mess with the empty, you also mess with the camera. That's what parent means. So to do this, rotate the empty this direction. Let's say minus 45. I don't know, minus 36. Start a keyframe, and in the end do 36. This is basically the same shot. Oh my god. It's basically the same shot, but who would have thought? Like, even when I was creating it, I wasn't thinking about it like this. Like, this is basically the same shot, the same movement, but you are just executing it in various ways to just create interest, to create intrigue. So yeah, this is the boring shot we just created, but to make it a lot less boring, we would add the interpolation. Cool. Now it looks a lot better. I think we need to fill the space up. At frame 24, which is the exact middle, let's move the camera forward. GY till it's filled up. Yeah. Okay, this looks a little better. Come on. Yeah, this was the point of the entire shot. Cool. Now we are focusing on the camera and making the camera to be close to this line in our rule of thirds. The thing about rule of thirds is that whatever you place on these lines would be the center of focus, and to look good in terms of a framing perspective, or whatever you place on these points particularly would be the subject of attention. That's what we are doing with this. Make the camera to stay on around that line. Yeah. So it's just like 2 seconds of you seeing what the camera looks like in a very cool way. You could do it however you want, you know. You could just choose to take your 3D camera and glide over the phone's camera. That is one thing. There are many things I've thought about in my previous tutorials. You could use any of those shots, but this one looks a lot cooler. The next shot, shot 6. Let's duplicate this collection, hide it, call it shot 6. The next shot is a very interesting shot. I think I saw this in a Nokia video. Was it a Techno video? One of these brands, I saw this shot in the video and I said, it will be fun to recreate. Yeah, it's actually pretty simple, and here is how we are going to do it. Delete all these keyframes. Make sure everything is set right. Delete this empty, we don't need it here. Make sure this camera is active. Yeah, the framing is something like this. RX 180 to rotate the camera. This shot is particularly about the camera, for you to take a look at the camera. So the camera should be in the center. Yeah, the camera should fill up the space. Since we want the phone to rotate about this camera, we want it to rotate using this camera as the origin, using it as the point of access. We'd have to do this exact same thing again, moving our origin point to here. So first move our 3D cursor to this point, then object set origin 3D cursor. Now when we rotate, we are rotating around this specific point. Okay, now let's duplicate this phone. Shift D, Y, go back a bit. Shift D, Y, go back a bit. Now we have 3 copies of this phone with our origin points right here. Okay, now go into your camera view The first thing we're going to do is just the simple rotation, rotating on the y-axis, right? So set a keyframe for the y-axis at frame 1, and at the last frame just move it a bit, like this much, just this much, say minus 18. Cool. Let's make sure it's interpolated right the way we want it to look, like this. Cool. Now let's do the exact same thing for the remaining 3 phones. Since the phones are coming out and sliding out like pa pa pa, 1 2 3, right? They're sliding out like 1 2 3. What we want to do is at, let's say, frame 15, we want this one to slide out, and at frame 30 we want this one to slide out. They're sliding at the same rate, so you won't see the ones at the back yet, but at frame 15 select this middle one. Let's add a new keyframe. Make sure you are selected on the Y rotation, I, to insert new keyframe on the selected channel. Now we could do whatever we want. The entire point of this was to make sure the first 15 seconds were exactly the same animation. Now from 15 we want to mess with it. From 15 we don't want it to end here like the first one. We want it to end here. So increase the Y and replace the keyframe. Make sure these two, first of all, hit V to make this handle type free, and make sure the interpolation is also similar, especially for these last two. So nice. So let's see how it looks now. Pop, 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 pop. Nice. Now the third one pops from 30. So let's do exactly the same thing. Now we want the third one to come out. Since we copied and pasted the animation of the first one also on the third one, at frame 30, add a new keyframe, I, selected channels. Yeah. So from here to the end, we need to change the animation. So at frame 48, let's slide it out even more. Nice. Insert new keyframe. First of all, let's change the handle type to free. Make sure the last two keyframe has this interpolation. Nice. 1 2 3, 2 3, 1 2 3. So it has a bop 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 kind of vibe. Let's make this white. Let's make this background white. Yeah, so we could see it clearly. So you can see bop bop bop, like a fan. So that's it for this. I think the other thing I did was to zoom in. Yeah, it made the effect a lot better to zoom in. Let's zoom our camera in at frame 1, somewhere here on the y-axis location. At frame 48, go closer on the y-axis and do the same thing. So boom, you see it has such a cool effect, like boom. This looks so nice. I hope you guys are following me right now and you are getting the same results. I'll be really happy to see what you guys create on Instagram. So if you do, when you do, I'd love to see it and share it. So our next shot is the cloth simulation shot. Yeah, just making cloth flow around the curve. So I tried many different ways to get this to work, but I finally landed on this specific technique. And this is the thing about simulations. This is why I don't do so many simulation tutorials on my channel. Simulations are finicky. There's a lot of trial and error that goes into it to get the exact look that you're looking for, and two people could do similar things and to look completely different just because of some very tiny parameter. But I want my tutorials to be something that anyone anywhere can follow it and be able to reproduce exactly what they see, or at least very, very close to what they see in the tutorial. So let's duplicate this shot into our new collection, call it shot 7. Now delete these, The same thing we did last time. Delete all the animations, Alt R to rotate. Let's make this camera active. Now let's move our camera backwards so we can see the entire frame. Now the first thing I would like us to do is to add a curve. So hit Shift A, curve. If you don't see this long list of curves here, that means there is one add-on you need to activate. So go to Edit, Preferences, and search for curve. Now you would see Add Curve, Extra Objects. Make sure that add-on is active. Make sure it's selected. So after enabling that, if you hit Shift A, you would have a bunch of options to choose from. When you have the time, you could just check out every one of these. They are very, very cool. They are really useful stuff. So we are going to choose Curve Spiral because we want to make a spiral around the phone. Yeah, Curve Spiral. Choose any of this. I'll choose Archimedean. Now in this drop down, we can mess with the settings. Yeah, we want to increase the height of this curve. We want to increase the turns. You could get as long as possible, but we'd want it to be just, let's say 2. And what else? Let's increase the steps a bit. Cool. Now hit Tab to go out of edit mode, and we have our curve, our nice spiral. I think we should scale it up. Scale it, Shift Z to scale it on every axis apart from Z. Yeah, just to make it wider. Now make sure your curve has not moved. Hit Alt G, Alt R to clear all the rotations and locations to make sure your curve has not moved at all. Now what we have to do is to add our cloth, which is a plane. Shift A, Mesh, Plane. Go into edit mode. Scale it up a bit. Scale it on the X axis. Yeah, like a very long cloth. Then subdivide. Right click, subdivide. Let's do about 16 cuts and add some fractal. If you look around you right now, you'd probably see 1 or 2 clothing materials and you notice that they are not perfectly flat. They are never in a perfect shape, right? They are always squeezed and rumpled in some way. But when it comes to renders, you are trying to make it as realistic as possible. So you add in those squeezes and rumples intentionally. So that's what fractal does. Just a little bit. You're just messing with the position of the vertices. Okay, this looks very, very weird. What we should do now is shade smooth and add a subdivision surface modifier. As you can see, it's already looking like cloth. Cool. Now what we need to do, Alt G, Alt R to make sure you have not moved the plane. Make sure everything is at the origin before you do this. If you have ever tried to make an object follow a path or add a constraint, a complex constraint, you realize that it can mess with you a lot. And the reason why that happens is because you don't start from the origin. When you are messing with paths and constraints, it's good advice to always set everything back to the origin so you can start from there. So add a curve modifier, curve, and select the spiral as the curve object. Now when we move on the x-axis, it will go around the curve. Okay, let's go into edit mode, scale it down the y-axis so it's not so wide. Nice. So at frame 1, let's add a location keyframe. Let's slide it out first and add a location keyframe. Let's increase our end frame to 120. We want this to last for a while. And if you are doing simulations and you're making it too fast, it might break something. Always give it time to simulate. So at 120, we'll move in the X axis until it's done with the rotation. Nice. Let's do something like this. Is that too far? Something like this. Yeah. So when we play back, it's just gonna go around quite nicely. It almost looks like there is already cloth simulation there, but there isn't. And now we are going to add the cloth simulation. Now at frame 1, go to physics properties, hit cloth. If you press play now, it's just going to fall down, just totally fall to the ground, because that's what happens. Gravity is turned on in physics, and when you hit play, naturally things just fall down. And you also notice that we are no longer going around the curve. To be able to drag this cloth around the curve, we need to add a pin group. Pins are basically what you use to hook your cloth simulation. If you want the cloth to be hanging by the edge, you could just hook it with a pin. So we are going to use the pin to drag it around. So enter edit mode, and from the top view, let's add another subdivision. Yeah, when you're working with cloth, the more subdivided it is, the more geometry you would have to create those folds for it to simulate. Now go to object data properties and create a new vertex group. To be able to do that, just select these vertices here, hit the plus sign, let's rename this to pin group, and hit assign. When you hit assign, click outside. Let me show you something. When you hit assign, if you hit select, it will select the vertices that it has assigned. Just to confirm that you have assigned the vertices, hit select and you would see all the vertices that you have assigned now. Cool. Now that we have created a vertex group, let's go into our simulation properties, our physics properties, go down to shape and select our pin group as the pin group. Now let's see what happens when we redo the simulation. You see, it's kind of working. That's the thing about simulations. You have to try different things again and again to get what you're really looking for. Okay, so it's kind of working. You can see that it's operating like a cloth, like proper physics simulation, and it's also going around the curve. You can see the pin group is dragging the cloth from that pin, from that point around. Nice. You notice that the cloth is falling down. It's falling because gravity is still turned on. Simulations like this, you don't want gravity to affect it. You want every force in play to be something very intentional. If you want to add wind, you can add wind and make it a lot more interesting. But we don't want gravity right now. We don't want it to fall down. We just want it to spiral. So let's go to field weights in our physics properties and turn gravity from 1 to 0. Yeah, let's see how that looks. Interesting. I think we should reduce the length of this cloth in your edit mode. Let's scale it on the x-axis. Okay, we would also have to adjust the location. You see, the thing with simulations, you always need to adjust one thing or the other continuously till you get what you're looking for. So replace single keyframe. Let's see how this looks. Cool. I think we should make our curve wider. So let's scale it Shift Z just to make it wider, so there will be enough space for the simulation to happen. Nice. Yep. Let's adjust our camera. Yeah, we still have animation on the camera. Let's delete all the keyframes, move our camera backward. Let's bring our phone somewhere in the middle of all this, because we want it to revolve around the phone. So let's have our phone somewhere here. Let's scale our phone up so it's larger. Yeah, make sure it's in the middle of the simulation. Now to adjust our camera, GY, yes, nice. Let's increase the length of this. Simulations, man. You have to really mess with every single thing so many times. Yeah, let's see how it looks now. Okay, that didn't quite make it better. Let's increase it just a tiny little bit. Let's see. Nice. Yeah, so let's have the phone somewhere in the middle of all this action. Somewhere here. When you're trying to create a simulation and you already have something in mind, like you want something to drop or move in a particular way, and you want it to do that for about, let's say, 5 seconds. When you have a section of that specific animation where the simulation does what you want, just take that part out and render it. Simulations are crazy, but they look so good. That's the thing, they always look so nice. Simulations are crazy. Yeah, go back to frame 1. Like, why is this acting like this now? Oh my god, this is hilarious. Why? Like, I literally did nothing. One thing I found is that if you change the quality step and change it back or something, just change a parameter, things would reset and work well. From all my days of frustration, I've learned that. Nice. So move our camera just so everything is kind of centered. Make sure it's not intersecting with anything throughout the entire simulation. Maybe I would make this smaller, just to make sure nothing is touching the phone. For Christ's sakes. So when you have done all your adjustments and you can now see the cloth revolving around the phone. Yeah, that's the thing with simulations. You can't just drag things until you bake. When you bake, then you can drag on the timeline. Let's see how this looks. Funny enough, this actually worked faster than I thought. On a normal day, this would take a while before you'll be able to get what you're looking for. Okay, so before we bake, depending on how fast your computer is, you could increase the quality steps just to make the simulation a lot better. So let me use 20, and if I'm happy with the rest of it, I could just go straight to cache, change our end frame to 120 and hit bake. Now let's wait for it to bake. Now that we are done baking, we'll be able to play our simulation a lot better. We'll be able to scrub down the timeline. So let's see. Nice. Okay, I think we should adjust. This is the best part we are looking for, just this part, as it comes from here to about here. So let's say 40 to 110. Let's change it. 40 all the way to 110. That's where we need for our render. And this is the most important part that we're looking for. So let's drag our phone and our camera down to fit this frame. Yeah. Nice. I think our phone is in the perfect place, but our camera is not. Let's adjust our camera very quickly. You could do this however you want. I'm just giving you my opinion. You could see from the show reel I posted, there was another shot from another angle that looked even a lot better than this. So just experiment with what you have. I hope you guys get this, and I hope you guys will be able to reproduce this thing. I'll be really happy if I see you guys create stuff like this. But if you have any problem, if you go through any challenge while working on this, the Discord server is always open. You could just jump in there and start a discussion. Yo guys, I tried doing this, but this happened, help. There will be people there always ready to help you. Okay, now let's look through our rendered view. Yeah, in our rendered view, for the material for the cloth, you could use whatever you want. But in that video, I think I did something blue. So let's select one blue here. Something else I did was to increase the transmission so it's transparent. So it's a transparent cloth. And reduce the roughness. Yeah. Doesn't this look so nice? So there you go guys, that's how you create this scene. Now let's jump to our next shot. Let's duplicate this one and call it shot 8. Okay, there's a lot to delete here. Let's delete the cloth for one. Delete the curve Select everything, make sure there's no animation. Now this final shot is probably my favorite shot in any phone animation I've ever seen from these big companies, Samsung, Apple, Google, these guys. This shot is definitely my favorite because the first time I saw things like this, I was like, wait, what happened? What just happened? Did this phone just pop out from nowhere? It looks so cool. And that's why they always end the animation using this shot. And I'm going to teach you guys right now. So roll with me. So we have our phone here. We want to start. Okay, let's reset this thing back to 48. 1 to 48. When you're rendering, remember to render 40 to 110 for that specific shot 7. Now we know what our shot is going to look like. We want our shot to look something like this, right? Now we'll start with the center phone. From the beginning, you want it to be very close to the camera, like this close. Set a keyframe for Y location. Then at the end, move it back to around the place you'd want it to end up, somewhere here, and set a new keyframe. So when we play back, it's a very boring animation. So let's make it interesting. In your graph editor, just make it fast to slow. Add a speed ramp. Nice. Cool. Just that simple thing makes the animation a lot cooler. Now we want to add another animation to this. Let's go to the last frame. Remember I said I like starting the last frame. And let's rotate this somehow. Remember I'll put our origin somewhere else. Let's change that. Objects, set origin. Origin center of mass volume. Yeah, so it's in the center. Cool. So we can rotate properly now. Now let's rotate this. Hit R twice. Rotate it somewhere you like. I like what this looks like. Cool. So yeah. This is how I want it to end. Now we want the Z rotation to change. So at the last frame, let's add a keyframe for Z rotation. And at the first frame, probably rotate it twice or something. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, so let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks weird. That looks erratic. Okay, so what we have to do is to also mess with the interpolation. So hit the drop down. Go to rotation, A, home, like we did before, and do this. Now they will have similar interpolation. Now let's watch. Nice. See? Fresh. Very nice. We don't want this animation to end here. We want it to keep slowing down till the end. So let's adjust this a little bit, just so that it still has some motion from here to here. Nice. Let's do the same thing for the Y location. Yeah. Cool. Nice. That's probably too much rotation, but who cares? It looks nice. Now, here is the thing. You want the other two phones to pop out of nowhere, right? And for it to happen so seamlessly that the viewers go like, what? How did that happen? So at some point, let's say at frame 15, where the phone is backing us. I've seen this happen many times in many phone animations. At the point where the phone is backing the viewers is where the trick happens, or the final rotation. You see, from 15 to 48 is just a very short rotation, and that's where you want those other guys to come out from. So at 15, this is what you do. Duplicate this iPhone, Shift D, duplicate it again, Shift D. So we are going to do something similar to what we did in the fan shot. So at 15, let's start with the second phone. At 15, you want to add keyframes to all location and all rotation. This is why we want Blender to know that at this keyframe, we are making a big change. So remember where this phone is at this specific keyframe, because you want it to start from the same point, then explode. So over location would hit I, over rotation would hit I. That means from this point, we could mess with how we want that phone to end. Make sure you have selected the second phone. At frame 48, you can now adjust your animation to however you want it. Make sure you are selecting the right phone that has all this animation. Now you want to move it out of here. You probably want to move it back. And you want to mess with the rotation in a way that you like. Let's say something like this. Or something like this. Cool. Something like this. Let's put it behind Cool. This is how you want it to end up. Let's rotate it. Let's rotate it a bit. Yeah, nice. This is how you want it to finally end up, right? So hit I and create new keyframes. So what this means is that for this phone, it's going to follow the motion of the first phone up until frame 15, and from then it will go its own way, right? You see, but it won't look good yet. Yeah, it actually looks good, but it won't look that good yet. From frame 15 to frame 48, we'll have to adjust the interpolation, and we'll do that one by one. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties here, and we'll adjust them one by one. So let's start with Y location. From 15 till the end, let's just make sure the handle type is free. It's very important, because if it's not, it would mess with 1 to 15. We want frame 1 to 15 to be exactly the same. Then from here, just adjust the animation. Nice. Let's do that for the rest. You're adjusting from frame 15 to 48. For this one that doesn't have any history of animation before 15, you don't need to make it free. Just do this. Shouldn't be that much anyways. Okay, the Z location didn't move at all, so there is no movements. That's not a problem. If you want to move it, it's up to you. In fact, let's move it. Let's move it. Frame 48. Let's make it go up. Let's add the keyframe. Then we would mess with this. So you'd see that the phone will go higher. Nice. From the exact same position to higher. Okay, let's do the rest. X rotation. You don't want it to be too much, because the first phone was already slowing down. Now, nice. You can see now. See? It's like the phone peeled off the back. Nice. Now let's do a similar thing for the third one. Remember, we duplicated the phone twice. So this phone 16, we do the same thing at frame 15. Hit I to add new keyframes for all the location and rotation. Go to the last frame and mess with it however you want it to end up. So I'm just moving parameters around. Let's bring this one down. Let's bring this one down. Let's bring it somewhere here. Nice. Looks weird, but I like it. It's actually fresher than the one I did with the Google Pixel. Nice. So at this point, hit I. Make sure you hit I again to register that keyframe. Now, as we did before, come here one by one to each of the keyframes and make sure you adjust the interpolation from frame 15 to frame 48. I think I'll just speed through this since I've done it before. Cool. Now let's see how it looks. Fresh. Make sure it wasn't intersecting at any point. So you see how it looks. Flies out, pops. Now, this is the final thing. We want the phones to be invisible. We don't want 3 overlapping phones in our render, right? So we want the phones to be invisible up until frame 15. To do that, make sure you are clicking the second phone. Go to frame 15. Go to your object property right here. Go down to visibility. And now set keyframes for visibility. This is how you make things appear and disappear in Blender. If you want something to just totally appear in the next frame and reappear, use this. You could keyframe the visibility in the viewport and in the render. So hit these 2 buttons here to tell Blender that at frame 15, remember that this phone is visible. Then go back 1 frame to frame 14. Disable the visibility and add the keyframes. Now it's literally going to disappear. You can see it from here. At frame 14 it was off, at frame 15 it's back. So it appears at frame 15. So it's not here, it's just 1 phone. Then at frame 15 it appears. Now let's do the same thing to this other phone. At frame 15, add the keyframes. At frame 14, turn it off and add new keyframes. So let's see how it looks. Sweet. They quite literally appeared out of nowhere. Nice. Let's see it in the rendered view. Oh my god, this is so beautiful. What, are you kidding me? This is so nice. And then if you have 3 different versions of the phone, like 3 different colors or something, then you could change the different colors. To change the screen is not actually difficult. Just go to your material and search for the screen. So depending on the model you're working on, whether you made it yourself or you downloaded it online, make sure you find the screen material, then change the image here. Let's just add a new image. Okay, let me use an image of something I was recently working on. Oh, if you want to change the screen of just one specific one, make sure before you do what I just did, hit this number, whatever number is here, and make sure you create a new instance for that material, so it's a different material. Now if I change this, it's just this one that changes. Nice. So we can have different screens. By the way, this is an NFT project I worked on, just something personal to explore some other areas in Blender, some other areas of animation. And there you have it, guys. We have our final shot. 8 shots. This was a long tutorial. We have 8 shots that we worked on in this tutorial. I would love to see how you guys reproduce this. I would love to see what you do with this. Tag me on Instagram. You guys know that I love seeing these things. You know I love sharing it. You know I actually take note of it. And while you are working on it, you could just post it on the Discord server so we could give our opinions. We could check it out. Like while I was working on this project, I was actually asking the Discord community, what colors do you guys prefer? This, that, and they actually helped me out. So I can't wait to see you there. So guys, thank you very, very much for watching. If you are still here right now, how are you even doing it? I really, really appreciate every single one of you for taking the time to come and learn with me, to come and create with me, and I would love to see what you guys create. This week, I'm going to be posting a follow-up video to show you how I edit this animation in After Effects and Premiere Pro. So somebody requested it in the comments. Don't worry guys, I read every single one of your comments. Someone requested that I show exactly how I cut it, because if you notice, my animations usually flow with the music. It usually goes bam bam bam. But for now guys, thank you very, very much for watching. Again, remember you could get this entire completed file on Gumroad for just $1. I'm not going to increase the price. It's $1 forever. Every project I'm creating on this channel as a tutorial. So if you liked what you just saw, please drop a like on the video. It really, really helps the channel grow. And also subscribe if you want to see more of the things I create. I'm more actively creating content now. So please subscribe. Turn on notifications so you can catch up immediately I make a post. Thank you very much guys. Again, it's been a wonderful time and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.